Welcome back to Uncharted, your sidekick for life. Today, we sit down with Samantha Jansky, co-founder and head of school at Ascent Academy, a learner-driven school built to help young people find a calling and change the world. In this episode, we dive into Samantha's journey, from dreaming of a political career to launching an innovative school model that flips traditional education on its head. We talk about entrepreneurship at age 6, learning through adventure, what real mentorship looks like today, and why true growth for both kids and parents starts with trust, courage, and stepping back. If you're curious about how education, leadership, and parenting are evolving, this conversation will open your mind in all the right ways.
Welcome to Uncharted, your sidekick for life, episode 2 of season 4.
That is so cool.
I am pretty excited about talking today to our guest. We have special guest today. All our guests are special. That's why they get invited. But the topic of today and the things that you've worked in is fascinating in multiple ways. So I want to definitely dive in. But before we do that, let's do some intros. Just for those that haven't seen our show before. We start with you.
So, yes, thank you. I'm Gloria Park, and I work in traditional type of wealth management, but I like to say that I help people find efficient and meaningful ways to get what they want, specifically work with business owners, and I really enjoy it. I'm also working on a book. You'll probably hear me say this in my intro quite a few more times, but working on a book to really create a roadmap for this and the next generation of business owners. So some of you may know that this generation will have the most new business owners out of any past generation. So, but there are not many reliable resources. So I want to put my experience and the people I've worked with, and also interviews that I've had with business owners, and just share their knowledge. So, yeah.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Natalie?
Hey, everybody. I'm Natalie Payton Newman. I keep forgetting I have a new last name. I am an actor and podcast person, Natalie. And I think my purpose here is to heal through humor.
Love it. Yeah. That's new, and I really like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Dan Dillard, a founder of multiple companies, and Founding Up is one of our current projects, and also podcaster and podcast host of Uncharted and others. So now let's get to our special guest. You want to just jump into your name and what you're doing currently, and we'll go from there.
Cool. Sure thing. My name is Samantha Jansky. Mm-hmm. I'm the co-founder and head of school of Ascent Academy, which is an innovative, learner-driven school with the mission that each person who enters our doors will find a calling and change the world. So we are all about empowering young people and helping them find their path in life.
Now we know why she's here, because everything that we talk about today or on this show is all about mentorship, all about how we learned from each other, and how throughout history, everything, knowledge has been transferred through mentorship, whether that's parents or others in the community that kind of help you kind of seek and find what your calling is in life. And what's really interesting to me through mentorship is really helps you find who that inner genius is. Mm-hmm. And the things that I want to dive into today is that's exactly what you guys are working at school. But before we go into the school and all that, let's just dive into a little bit more about your background and how you ended up where you're at. So what kind of mentorship got you to where you're at, or what paths led you to where so the way I like to do that is let's go back to whenever you were in high school. Like, what did you want to be when you were in high school?
Oh, that's such a good question. And I had such an amazing high school experience. I was lucky enough to go to, it was a public school, and very, very innovative, ahead of its time, learner-driven, and all about getting our hands dirty, experiencing life, traveling. And we had a lot of autonomy over what we learned, and we got to choose our classes and design basically our own 4-year experience. And I had just the most amazing teachers. I reflect on the fact that I hear from a lot of people that I had this one teacher or this one teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And I had so many of those. The whole school was just full
Mm-hmm.
of people who were very dedicated and trusted young people
Mm-hmm.
and really pushed us. I had one teacher in particular. Her name was Roberta Page. I keep saying was. Everybody's still there. But she was just amazing and pushed me and saw a light in me and someone who was really interested at the time, actually, in high school. I took all of her classes, which are all political science.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool.
And I was really into learning about history and civics, and that was her main focus.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kept taking her classes, and I was trying to figure out what my opinions were on where my stance was.
Yeah.
And through that, I just kept being pulled to wanting to make change, but I didn't know what that meant.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like it'd be hard for the teachers or guides of the school you went to make a lesson plan, like for the semester or however the year is laid out, if the kids are coming up with their own learning plans or
no, that's a great question. I'll clarify. They had classes.
Okay.
It was kind of like college and high school.
Oh, wow.
You could just pick your own classes.
Yeah.
I see.
But they had such a huge variety. So it was like there wasn't anything very typical about it.
Gotcha.
But
Okay.
you had to hit a certain amount of sciences.
Sure.
But then on the side, we had our own projects that we designed out that were like multi-year projects
Oh, wow.
in different focus areas. And so that's where a lot of the autonomy came in, but that's what we were working on the side.
Okay, cool. Can you tell us what your project was?
Oh, we had 6.
Oh,
They're different categories. But I would say that the kind of biggest, heaviest one, so there's like logical inquiry, career exploration was one, practical skills. I think there's a creative expression, global awareness. Let's see if I can remember all. The one that had the most weight was the adventure passage.
oh,
And so
fun.
that was where you had to really dig into. It wasn't an external adventure. It was like, what's your internal adventure?
I'm thinking of a
Oh,
pilgrimage here.
And then what do you go do
Oh.
to really connect with whatever you need to do to know yourself better?
Mm.
And mine was on independence. I knew I wanted to go places. I knew I wanted to do things. I knew I wanted to push myself. I was a very timid child. I mean, like I was a rule follower, and I was also nervous about risks, but I did them anyway.
Mhm.
Oh, that's nice.
I was like, okay,
Here we go.
I did the thing.
I see them and I got to
I
get it
did
done.
and I have to do it, but I was never comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And so, but I had these awesome advisors and teachers, and helped me highlight that's like, no, I need to learn to be comfortable on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a series of challenges. One of them involved going abroad and living with a family in France for a summer, and then another was planning my own trip with just a friend, and we went off. So we did have adventures, but the core of it, I've found a job. So the core of it was like building up my independence.
That's so cool.
I'm curious. I'm trying to figure out if you had any type of image of what you wanted to become either before that experience or during that experience, or if it changed. So before you went into the high school, did you like wanted to be this or want to be that? Do you remember any of that? Or
I wanted to be an opera singer for a while.
okay, all right.
No, I think that what I loved science in middle school and high school.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that I think, it was just, I was just very curious, and I loved learning about how the world works. And then, I think I would say by senior year of high school, I was like, I'm going to be in the political world somehow.
So it shifted from opera singing and other interests. That's
I
really cool. And I
love
love learning about that. I remember 6th or 7th grade, there's 2 things I liked. It's like either soccer or fireman. And I just didn't have any rhyme or reason why. It was just, those are the things that I liked. But then that was just kind of the flavor of the season, and just moved on from there.
Yeah.
After high school, there was some technical. I loved working with my hands. I come from a family that, uncle's a welder, my dad's a mechanic, my brother's a painter. Like they all of this. So part of me at one point wanted to maybe open a body shop and do that. And I was like, I dealt enough, and I grew up in that world that I wanted to do something different. And I remember then wanting to go and become an architect. So that was just kind of these are the flavors that were changing throughout that growth period.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just an interesting journey that everyone goes through. And I just want to, for those listeners that are out there, and they're just kind of, sometimes some of that was stressful because you're like, oh, should I do this? Should I do that? There's so many decision making, and it's just normal.
Yeah.
And so some of the things that kind of shape those decisions, and the message through this podcast is some of the people that you pick around you to kind of start looking at different options. So how did that look like it for you? It started changing throughout high school into the political sciences and that, and then it continued, obviously, because you're not in that field right now.
No, I've tried a lot of different things.
Let's continue the journey. So you were in high school.
I didn't have a direct path at all. And I will say I did have an apprenticeship with a veterinarian. So I did explore that as well.
Same thing.
It was really fun.
Like 4 years.
Oh, nice.
It was wonderful.
Yeah. They let me do that at, I think I was like 13. I can't believe they let me do that, but it was a different time.
That is
I had to have a license. So I had the job before I had the license, but I had to be 16 years old to be able to go and do that. But because they wanted me to drive different things, but go get errands and that kind of stuff. So that was cool. But isn't that fascinating? That was really neat.
Yeah.
So back to your story,
Yes.
high school, you're getting this wealth of just diversity of knowledge and challenges and different things. And you have multiple teachers that are really great, kind of showing you mentoring you different ways, as well as teaching. And so you go to political sciences. So what's next after that? Did you go to college for that, or let's just kind of continue that story?
Yeah. Well, I went to college for international studies because I traveled a lot in high school as well, and middle school with this program, and knew I just wanted to be out in the world. And
pause real quick. I have a question about travel.
Yeah.
And I meant to ask it earlier.
No,
you spent the summer in France, and you're this timid person. I'm just trying to
Did you speak the language?
I said, I did the things.
How do you connect the two? Because I'm like, wow, that's really brave to go live with someone for a summer that you don't know, and like.
Man, I just think I was surrounded by people who were risk takers and wanted to push boundaries, and I had friends who would, drag me to explore the storm drains in the neighborhood, which sounded terrifying and like a really bad idea, but I would just go with them.
Oh, wow.
I was just kind of fortunate to have people around me who would push me to do things. It was like positive peer pressure. It was like push me to do good, hard things. And so that in that way, I think I was just really fortunate.
And I assume your parents were good with all that.
They now say they can't believe they let me do the things that they let us do. They're grandparents, so they're really different now. But yeah, they did. They were good with it. They really trusted me.
I've got it from the lens of dad. I've got a 22-year-old. And if she said, hey, Dad, I'm going to go to summer and live with some people you don't know for the summer, I think I'd have to grow through that. I'd be like, okay, let me see how we can get comfortable with it. I want her to have the experience, but at the same time, I've got the whole protective, that. That's
the work of being a parent. I think it's like, that's a lot of, we'll get to it, but that's a lot of what I do is like supporting our parents who know they want these experiences for their children and know it's good to get out there and take risks and fail, but it's hard to watch.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, continue. So you went into college, and I just wanted to pull that nugget out.
Yeah. So,
international studies.
Yeah. I wanted to get out in the world and make change. So I just kept choosing paths that would maybe allow me opportunities to do that. And I loved school. I had great classes. It was super interesting. I got to pursue French more. I think I mentioned, I've brought this up with you in the past. I was always kind of that person at the front of the class and hand raise and really excited and get engaged. And that was just sort of as a result of my high school, I think, just, encourage that lifelong learning. And I still relate to learning that way. So that's why I do what I do. I'm always learning.
Yeah.
And I landed a couple internships after
University,
college,
yeah.
and I ended
In
up in
politics?
DC for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to work on the Hill for a year, which was great. And
What was that experience like?
it was great. It was so interesting. I loved being behind the scenes on things, seeing how stuff works, and meeting really interesting people. I wasn't sure it was for me. Like, it was just a really good exploration.
Mhm.
Actually, I kind of knew it wasn't for me. I felt like there was a lot of, I think, just the scene of, who do you work for? Who do you know? Who do you
Yeah.
that I don't know. It just wasn't for me.
Right,
I was
right.
like, I thought, interesting. I really just want to meet people.
Yeah. I'm just here to learn.
I have no network
I was
and I
like,
want to get all of yours.
I was like,
and
I have the red intern badge.
Yeah.
No one wants to talk. But what I loved about it was that I was challenged to refine some skills that were really important and actually serve me now, like writing. I write all the time. That's a lot of my job, and being able to just kind of step into a space, meet new people, and I think that it was really valuable.
Mhm.
It was a little scary. It was really scary.
Mhm.
Should I be here? Okay, I'm taking notes on this policy meeting. This is great.
Yeah.
But it was awesome. And
But part of that, also that journey, for those that are in it at the moment and listening to this, is knowing like, I also think about your sculpting, like a sculpture. It's like you're taking away what isn't the core. And so it sounds like that year was like, great, good experience, but that's not who I am.
that's not for me. Right. Well, and I will say, to get this internship, I think I did like 50 informational interviews in DC.
Wow.
I just went there. I worked at Starbucks to afford rent, and I just kind of called everybody I possibly knew and asked for meetings with anybody. And so I met with people from State Department. I met with people in, the what is it? National Art. Oh my gosh, the NEA. And sorry, never mind.
That's
I don't
okay.
even remember.
Yeah.
But
Lots of introductions and
Oh,
important
Was it
introductions.
discouraging?
Doesn't sound at all like you were timid to me.
Right?
I
Or
just
did you have a
did.
goal every day? It's like,
Yeah.
I got to do these 10
Yeah.
things and get them knocked out.
Well, it's like, I always laugh as guides. You're very aware, but you're zen. So you're like,
Mhm.
you're not bringing your stuff to anything.
Right.
So we would say we're ducks. It's like you're paddling
working
under the water.
under the surface.
But
yeah.
like smooth. It's like that was a lot of it. It was like there was a lot of, it was mostly like, it was internal angst
Yeah.
all
Sure.
the time,
Mhm.
and a feeling like I don't belong here, but just doing it anyway. It's
Right.
like, okay, I'm just gonna do it.
It was good
But
done.
50, it took 50 different interviews to get the internship.
Something like that.
And was that
And
discouraging?
then,
You
let
just
me
kept
talk to
going.
somebody.
Yeah.
But they were information. I just wanted coffee. They weren't for
Okay.
jobs.
Gotcha.
Just put me in. I just want to sit. I just want to learn about what you do. So
Yeah.
it's informational interviews.
I
It's like,
see.
can you tell me about so I just got coffees with people, and they would tell me about their work. And then
Okay.
eventually I got a contact that was like, oh, hey, and so-and-so's office, they want somebody. And
And I find that that's the best way to get things done, is when you don't go in with an agenda. You just like, I want to learn, starting the magazine, starting podcast, starting all the things that I've done. It's always it's never been like, hey, I want your business or anything like that. Or I want you to be a customer and talk like that. I just want to meet you and learn about you.
Yeah.
And then naturally through, as you pointed out, there'll be this connection that happens. And the really cool thing is, as you're doing those 50 interviews, you're growing along the way, because you're getting knowledge of those 50 interviews, and your interview process and your value to that meeting just grows exponentially. And so, yeah, it makes a lot of sense why that happens.
yeah, it was a great experience.
Yeah.
Was that being curious? I think was a big part of it.
So you're in there and you've done that, and you're like, okay, this is not me.
Yeah.
What's next?
Yeah. So then I decided I should probably go. I should say I didn't say it wasn't for me yet.
Okay.
I think I was still curious.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't know how to be in that world.
Mm-hmm.
But I did want to I did want to get back to what I had studied, which was international relations and humanitarianism.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did go look for work in that field. And so I landed a job with a nonprofit doing fundraising,
Mm-hmm.
and they worked in Haiti. And so I got to go to Haiti as well and meet people there. And that was really powerful.
Utilize your French a little more.
Yeah, use a little French. Tried to learn some Creole.
Yeah. That's a hard one.
It's a tough one. It's a cool language though. And from there I did get to see how that deep value in education.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just something that clicked for me as what happens in life. A light bulb went off, and I sort of started to piece together, my experience in DC and wanting to improve things here in the United States, and then also taking my experience abroad and knowing that education to me was the source of so many problems, is what I saw.
Mm-hmm.
And I just started piecing together connections. Oh, I had this really awesome, unique experience. This is where a lot of problems are rooted in. I think I need to get into education. I'm interested in political science and civics. I'll do policy. So I pieced it together, applied for graduate school. So I took a year to do that. And while I was hanging out and applying for schools, I also got to dabble in the startup world, which was cool. I had a friend who was starting a company and needed someone to just work with them, be an executive assistant. And when there's 4 people, you do everything.
Yep. Yep.
So it was cool. I found myself pitching to get people to join the scientific advisory board, on my own, and it was a wellness company and writing grants because I had done that. So I just sort of did everything with them.
Right.
And they also gave me a lot of really cool chances, which was so fun. So I got to see the startup world, which was great. So I dabble in business a little bit and see how that operates, and the whole venture world, which was wild. And, I got into grad school. I was on my way to Duke, and the people I was working with happened to have learned about this really cool school in Austin that's encouraging young people to develop an entrepreneurial mindset, because they had learned about it from their world of being serial entrepreneurs. And it's like, I'll check that out. And then it all just clicked. I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And so I went and did my apprenticeship at Acton, and I got to see the beginnings of that network forming. There were only 2 campuses at the time.
Oh, wow.
And there was really there was a dream of maybe making this available, but there wasn't really a strong need at the time. And then in just a few years, it ramped up really fast. I started working with my now co-founder and best friend, Janita Lavani, and we were guides together, so we got to work with the children. And then
before we jump into that, just for the
That'd be
audience, would you just describe what Acton is? Because I know it's it's an entrepreneurial school, but can you talk about the experience and what you saw and what they do?
Yeah, I would say
I think that really will speak to this next phase of the story.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the core of it, it is a learner-driven environment. The entrepreneurial piece of it is super important, but it's not that everybody needs to go start their own business. It's just that these days we know having a mindset of an entrepreneur is really important, and that flexibility, that adaptability, being able to be, and create and think critically. So that's really more what that piece is about. But the Acton Network, it's a network of schools around the world now, and they're learner-driven, which means that the adult is not the authority. The children are empowered to run their spaces. They have autonomy over their learning. They have a ton of choice, a lot of freedom.
So Acton is from what age to what age?
Well, they're
before this next phase that you're working with, there's.
Yeah. There's schools all over that we go through high school. Okay. Yeah.
High school, and then also a graduate school as well, as far as Acton?
No. There was an Acton School of Business.
Got it. Okay, maybe I'm confused.
Connected.
Got it.
Yeah. That came first.
I got it.
And then the academy came next. Yeah.
All right.
But start to like preschool.
Our school does.
Your school
Yes.
does. Okay.
Yeah. So we start at age 4.
Got it.
And we go through age 12.
Mhm.
But some Actons go all the way from they go from age 6 to through high school. Some stop in just elementary. So it's all different. Yeah.
And my understanding of Acton is this learner-driven environment, and there's things like career day. Unlike a career day that's what typical people understand, this is more like they actually go put their shops up and like, I'm going to go build a business and have that kind of. That's what I've learned from what Acton is.
Yeah, so that's the Acton Children's Business Fair.
Got it.
And actually, and my understanding is anybody can run one of those.
Got it.
So you don't actually have to even be an Acton.
Right.
So it's kind of its own separate. I mean, a lot of Actons run those, but it's its own separate entity, which is really cool. So there's a ton of fairs running, but the idea is that, and we host one at Ascent every year, and they come up with a business idea, execute on a plan, they figure out their unit economics. They come up with a price. They have to design their booth. They have to make their product. And then on the business fair day, they present it. And parents have to sign a contract that they will not help.
Wow.
And if you give your child money, the child comes up with a plan to pay it back. That's part of it. It's a loan.
And at what age are these kiddos creating these businesses?
You have to be at least 6 to start a business.
Wow.
Yeah. It goes until 13. So it's like the age.
And it's not play pretend. It's like these kids are actually
they're selling.
bringing in money,
Yeah.
and
Some of them are very successful. And there have been a few at other fairs that have gone on to actually launch real businesses.
That's what I was wondering. Is
they're like in the market. It's
like, that
pretty
was a
wild.
good idea, and then boom, it took off.
Yes, it's a great place to test out your ideas. It's just awesome. And then, so that's the Children's Business Fair, which is so incredible. At the school, we run an entrepreneurship quest as well, which takes them through that whole process for 6 weeks as well.
So for the audience, I want to jump in. So
No,
that was
it's okay.
Acton, and now we're going into your school, what you co-founded. Can you talk about that moment where you're like, hey, I want to build this, and how is it different than Acton, or how is it like just that relationship?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I mean, what I saw is my time as a guide, what I felt so honored to see. I was witness to such incredible transformation in young people when they're given freedom and trust, what they're capable of. And they just kept exceeding any kind of expectations adults were putting on them. And I knew I wanted to make this available to more people. And then it so happens that I was teamed up with my now co-founder, Janita Lavani. We're so complementary. We work really well together. We're both interested in pushing and innovating and seeing where this can go. And so knowing that we work well together, and it was really like the next step for guides in this model was to go out, launch, let's get this to more people.
Yeah.
Right.
So that was kind of the plan once the network started growing anyway, for the guides who wanted to. And it really did resonate with me.
Okay.
And so, and it resonated with Janita. And so we launched Ascent Academy, and we're an affiliate in the Acton network.
Got it.
And
so that looks like
19.
Okay, so Acton has this overarching plan, and then you have almost like a franchise school, but it's your own.
They're independently run.
Yeah.
It's really a community of schools that are implementing this model.
Got it.
But each one is independently owned and run.
Okay.
Yeah. And we share ideas.
Got it.
I was going to say, is there rules you have to abide by to be a part of the network, or?
Yeah, I mean, you do. You can't. I mean, it's basically the foundation of the model. You are asked to uphold.
Okay.
So the mission that each person is going to find a calling to change the world, and that you're there to empower them to do that. And you can't teach. So we commit to no teaching, no lectures, and staying in Socratic mode, which means that the adults are there to support the learning. They're answering they're responding to questions with questions.
Mhm.
Sounds a lot like classical education.
I think that I would say, I can't speak to classical education, so I don't have experience in that, but from what I know, I would say it is in that what we've done is taken and this is how Janita and I relate to what we do. We've taken the wisdom of what's worked in the past
Mm-hmm.
and applied it to the needs of the future. So,
And you
no.
keep saying the word guide. So I
Yes.
guess teachers or guides are actually teachers. So
guides
you're
are the
guiding
adults.
The adults, okay.
Typically. There are also, sometimes
Student guide.
Guide, mentor. You had another question regarding, or before we started the show, you had another question regarding business plans.
Yes, and you touched on it.
Sure.
That was one of the things that I was very excited about this podcast. Was I was thinking, I'm pretty sure that's the academy or school that helps students create business plans. And so you had shared at age 6, they're starting to do this, which is amazing. But could you share more about that, about these business plans and how that flows?
How do you guide that?
Sure.
I'm just wondering.
You're not teaching them. So it's like, how do they learn to create a cash flow model, break-even point?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, how?
It's so fun. So at Ascent, we run the entrepreneurship quest. And a quest is like our version of project-based learning. And so that's when they're basically given a series of challenges that lead them to some kind of outcome. And in this case, they go through a series of entrepreneurship challenges that get them to launching a business. And so it's very fun. It's like a game. We call it eShip. There's a map. You move to each challenge. Different island has a different focus. And so there's like substitute and competition island, and there's a business idea island, and then there's unit economics island, and at each one you're given challenges, and it basically breaks down the process of building out a business for them to do on their own.
Are the students connected with any business leaders or business owners in the community?
Yeah, we bring in heroes to share their story with them.
Oh, that's nice.
And so they get to hear a full kind of hero's journey story, sort of what we're doing here. Like what failures did you face? Who were your mentors, and how did you get to be where you are? And so that part's really sweet.
Yeah, that's wonderful. When I was doing my undergrad at Incarnate Word in San Antonio, I entered a couple business plan competitions and actually won first place in 2 of them. And we were assigned a business leader from the community. And that was the most impactful for me because one in particular, he worked for H-E-B on a global scale. And I didn't know that even existed. I thought H-E-B was just a supermarket that sold stuff. But his role was traveling the world and visiting vendors. And so that opened my mind. I'm like, wow.
You're like, I want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a very
love that aisle
niche job.
Yeah, no kidding.
But he'll go all over the world. Like, for example, I remember him sharing about a trip he came back from he went to India to check out a cucumber farm that provides pickles to a vendor that provides cucumbers to a pickle creator or jar or whatever they're called. But the whole story of the quality control and due diligence that he had to go through to select this particular farm in India was amazing. So, but from my experience of doing these type of business plan competitions, that was the most impactful, was these mentors where they're actually doing it, and something so unique too, but still so essential to business. Yeah.
One of the things that I like about that, and what we are bringing through this podcast and the other work that Founding Up is doing, is what you just pointed, is that a lot of times you don't have an idea of what is available to you out there. Like this job of having to go around the world as a global inspector, like who would have thought? Like if you're, the most common thing, and I'm going back to my financial planning days, when you're talking to parents and kids about what they're going to do, if they're going to college, they're thinking lawyer, doctor, accountant, that's for whatever reason, that's what comes to mind. But then there's like hundreds of thousands of other things that you could do. So part of the work is really just opening the eyes to all the options and the paths and how to get there, which are fascinating. So
that's really
like this, for example, is fascinating to me. Is like starting your own school and the teaching in a way that's non-traditional and taking the wisdom of other ways and like combining it, because there are natural limits that we all put in our mind because we can't imagine those things. We're like, okay, this is the way schools are supposed to be. And the questions you asked about the schools, like, what, any rules? What kind of rules do you have to follow? It's like, until you get in there and figure it out, then that's its own path. And it just becomes a beautiful learning experience. And that's how we learn those, like having you on show, that kind of thing. So it's wonderful to learn.
Are there other education systems that you've looked into to help, or pull things from to help improve Ascent?
That's a great question. I would say that the foundation of what we do, I mean, as far as like how the guides interact with young people is really rooted in the teachings of Maria Montessori.
Okay, Montessori, yes.
And she was a scientist first before she wasn't an educator. She was a doctor. She observed and created, and she was a disruptor. And her ideas about trusting children and setting up spaces that are for them, that are designed for them, things are their size. They can, they have small glass pitchers that they can use. Trusting them. I mean, that's like, I keep saying it, that's the biggest part, is like trusting them, not underestimating them. Those were her teachings. And so the way that we guide is really rooted in that. And then actually, practically at Ascent, for our youngest, we use all of the Montessori materials, in fact, for their learning to start before they start using software program.
We have about 10 more minutes, and I'd like to spend that on just kind of the day in the life of these kids and the parents. You mentioned that earlier. I want to get to the parents because part of this is a community. And so would you talk a day in the life of, and so what is a parent and a child expecting as they come in? What does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So they start their day with about 30 minutes of free time outside, get settled, play. Play is so important. We start right on time. They all know to be in their Socratic discussion circles at 8:30, and they hold that line with each other. And we launch the day with a discussion about either what it is that they're going to be working on in Quest. I mentioned the entrepreneurship Quest, but going back to what you were actually saying about exploring all the options, a lot of what we do is with quests that are all over the map, because that's one way to find a calling, is to explore. So we have architecture and marine science and entomology and coding. And so we launch them into whatever it is they're working on. And that involves, a launch involves questions that don't have a right answer and have a forced choice, so that you can have a really engaging, high-energy discussion where you are forced to take a stance and defend that stance. There's rules of engagement for the discussion. Be concise. Don't repeat points already made. Start with I agree or I disagree, so you're building off of the points. And they hold those rules of engagement. And so they start with a really engaging thought-provoking discussion that starts their critical thinking right away. It's like how they start their day.
What I picked up on that, which I really love, is they start at 8:30 and they hold each other accountable. So you're teaching integrity from the very get-go, which is something that is so crucial in life, is being able to trust someone else's word. Everything is built off of that. And as I've studied how different societies value their word and integrity. So there's some societies that their word is just like, that's gold. I speak into existence. There's others that are like, I believe when I see it. kind of societies, which is kind of one that we live in. So
Mm-hmm.
then you have to have contracts and you have to have things that are believable because in general they're not.
Mm-hmm.
And so I find it incredibly valuable whenever you're having them hold each other. It's not the teacher holding them to an hour. It's that they hold each other to that integrity, which is really cool.
Yeah, they do it well and they do it with kindness, but they're firm. You know, they hold high standards for each other.
Okay.
And that part of that is their contract of promises that they write at the beginning of the year of how they want to show up every day with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then throughout, and that's really the authority in the space anyway. And then they show up ready to live by that and do their best, and they fail and then they try again. And well, I'll get back to the schedule. So they launch into either their quest, which is like where they're building things, designing things, getting their hands dirty, whatever it is, experimenting. And they do that for the first part of the day. And then they have their lunch, free time. They're outside a lot, which is really important to us. And then they have a chunk of their day. It's usually a couple hours of work cycle. And that's where they get to set SMART goals for themselves. So this is what I commit to doing for the day. And that's where they get into their independent work. So they're working on math, reading, writing, the basics. But they work through it at their own pace based on their goals. And the idea there is for them to push themselves to their limits. So a SMART goal, you've heard specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. We added another T, which is tough. And so it's SMART. And they really know that, you mean, they're learning how to do it. That is part of this whole process. It does take years to change habits, and learning to set goals is something most people either never tackle or do so very late in life. But our 6-year-olds are working on it. And they get the time and space to work on what it is that they're pulled to that day. Or we have a badge system, which is like the bare minimum of the basics that they need to get done before they move on to the next step. But they go at it at their own pace. So someone's really passionate about math, they just keep going and they can go as far as they want. They're not restricted by age-based milestones.
Very cool.
So,
all right, let's jump into parenting.
That's a lot of my focus these days.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
So, I was guide for years, and now as head of school, that's a lot of my work is supporting our parents. And it's such a tough job. Not mine, parenting.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm also a parent, so I also have that tough job.
Do your kiddos go there as well?
Yeah, well, one is only 10 months old, but
Okay,
the 6-year-old is there. Yes.
What's the SMART goal
Yes.
for this?
Yes. It's we always say that parenting in this model is the toughest role.
Okay.
And I've started reframing that actually, because we say it's really hard. But I actually think what's harder is seeing your child in an environment where they're not trusted, and in an environment that's very controlling. And even though that's our norm, living through that, and I think seeing your child in that environment is very hard. What we're asking people to do is tough, conscious inner work. That is, it is hard, but it's a different kind. And it's the kind that leads to a fulfilled life, I think. And so what we ask our parents to do is their inner work so that their children can be free and empowered. And it doesn't mean not doing anything, right? Like being a parent is an active role, and you're the leader of your house, and there's a ton of responsibility. But it means seeing your child as their own person on their own journey, and you're there to support, and you're there to hold boundaries and like guide them through this life and share testimony, but that your journey isn't theirs.
Right.
And that is really hard to do as a parent, is to distance yourself from what you experienced. And of course you bring your wisdom to your parenting and you bring your experiences there, but that's different than putting your either your hopes and dreams or your fears or the things that you've onto
How
your
old
children.
is your oldest?
She's 6.
Okay. Having a 22-year-old, probably the most experienced in the room as far as kids go. What I learned along the way is that it's her journey, it's my journey, and it's our journey because I'm growing along with her, because she'll face things that I haven't faced. And then together we've got to I've got to know when to lean in and when to lean back, and a lot of other things.
Yeah.
So I see it as a continued journey of a parent, because you're going to be faced with things. You think that you've got wisdom, and yeah, you've got your wisdom up to that point, but there's always a new challenge for you that he or she's going through. And how do you make that? It's never the same as when you grew up. So the entire society is growing in a different path than, like, you look at all these, I tell my daughter always, we're all different computers with different programming. We're trying to talk to each other, and sometimes that's really difficult, but you have to understand that piece, and just kind of seeing it in a different viewpoint that way has helped me a lot, from the standpoint of, there's just, if you think about, cell phones didn't exist for me until I was, I don't know, 10, 15. I had my first cell phone at 15, but they grew up in an environment with computers in their hands. These cell phones are not just cell phones, they're computers. Mine was just right. And just because that fact in itself, and just that entire different environment, having the whole world at your feet through social media is at her age, was completely different than the kind of environment I grew up in. So it is a continual growth. Like, you have to jump into the new world and be like, okay, what are they facing that I haven't faced, and how would I face that? So I love that you talk about their own journey, because a lot of parents, I know that at one point when she was really young, I didn't see that. I didn't see it that way at all. I had to learn that separation of journeys.
Yeah, and I think it does. It takes a lot of that is the hard work that we're talking about, and you're talking about different phases. Janita's son is just turned 17, so we're in very different parenting stages too, and it really is something. I'm glad she's pioneering. But it is exactly what you're saying, and we have so many parents who are like, I think what I see the most is, and we have a wonderful community, but just over the years, what I've seen the most is, I think parents are now willing to kind of sit with that truth that we don't know. And honestly, we also wear our badge of honor that we're not experts. Right. We're learning. We're always learning. Yeah. And the world's changing, and keeping up with it's really tough. I think for parents to know that, like, oh yeah, can I be open and curious? Yeah. And grow alongside, because I'm never actually going to know exactly what to do, and I'm not going to get it right.
Well, I guess what I was trying to articulate is, it's easy, and I've done this before. It's easy to go back to, well, when I was growing up, this is the way it was. And when you see your child face a similar challenge that you face at that age, you try to tackle it with that wisdom of that age, when you need to tackle it with wisdom of this age. And that's leave that grace in between to figure out, okay, what does that look like? And that is the growth.
But we also always say, though, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater either, because there's lessons to learn.
Sure.
Oh my gosh!
Right, with
kids can teach
from the past.
How do you guide parents through learning and this really complete 180 of thought?
Yeah. So they
get their own pictures.
They get.
Their size.
Exactly. Glass pitchers that are their size. Exactly. We practice. We have a parent meetings throughout the year.
Okay.
Where it's a very large, wonderful gathering. It's a Socratic discussion, but it's where we dig into elements of the hero's journey together. And we also at Ascent have parent squads, where there's like small groups of parents where we offer a discussion where they can dig in and offer resources, books to read, whatever we've found recently, helpful podcasts. So they can also share information. And it's also just a space to share testimony. And I would say that, plus we have a parent contract that is, I actually think, very helpful, because it sort of shows it's very clear. It's like, this is what it's going to take. And it's part of that is trusting the process, being on your own hero's journey.
That's so important.
Those are the...
Yeah, I think that's so important.
It's like a guiding.
Yeah. I've worked with a life coach for a number of years now, 6 or 7 years. And the first things that she taught is you establish a framework for everything so that you have that middle communication. And that framework, what you just said with that contract, that's the framework. Here is how we agree. If you think about most schools, like I didn't have that with my daughter whenever it was just, you go to public school and, I'll come to a teacher's meeting every once in a while, and that was it. And I'll go do my thing, you go do your thing. That was kind of where this seems to me is like, no, it's more involved. This is a contract how we're all, as a community, it takes a village to raise a child. And so that's what that approach sounds like to me. And on that note, can you guys believe we're out of time?
Already?
It's been a great,
this is really nice.
Great discussion.
Really
I feel like we could have gone a Joe Rogan podcast on this and go 4 hours.
So enlightening.
I think that might be more my style as a library.
No, it's great.
My rule of engagement is to be concise, but it's
it's so much.
I agree.
When you talk about this subject, it's so important to all of us.
Yeah.
To as parents, as guides, as teachers, as mentors, is how do you give that knowledge to the next generation so that they go and be their hero? And it's so important to all of us. So thank you for the work you're doing, and thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Samantha.
Appreciate the time and the questions.
That's a wrap on episode 2 of season 4. Huge thanks to Samantha Jansky for giving us a fresh, real look at how today's young people can and should be leading their own learning journeys. From co-founding Ascent Academy to rethinking what it means to guide, mentor, and parent, Samantha's journey reminds us the future belongs to those willing to ask better questions and trust the process. If today's conversation resonated, share it with someone thinking differently about education, leadership, or parenting. Subscribe and leave a review, and stay with us. Uncharted, your sidekick for life, is just getting warmed up this season. Want to be a Gen Z contributor or a featured guest? Check out the show notes or visit foundingup.com/uncharted_podcast. Until next time, live curiously, lead courageously, and learn fearlessly.